I'm privileged and honored to be here. I think when we look back and our family members from where we've come, whether it's from Mexico, from Colombia, from Puerto Rico, I don't think any of our family members would ever have thought that our community, this Latino community, would be considered a giant in the most powerful nation in the world, the United States of America. I think back to my grandfather, and it's very ironic because my grandfather was born in Oakland, California, Mexicano, but he was put in a boxcar and shipped to Mexico for the simple fact because he was Mexicano. My other grandfather came over in the early 50s and he put on a suit and he crossed the Rio Grande on his brother's back so that he would only get his feet wet so that he can go and interview for a job so they wouldn't consider him a wetback and that he could provide dollars and send them back to Mexico, to my grandmother and the kids that we had. And I think about that every day because it's because of their struggles, because of their perseverance, they survived and they thrived and built a family here in Chicago. And I'm very fortunate and blessed because of that. I consider myself a double immigrant. Even though I was born here in Chicago, not only immigrant being viewed as a Mexicano, but also an immigrant to the financial services industry. I have one of 6 Latino firms in the country that do what we do. And when I'm dealing with the largest CEOs in the country, largest investment firms, they still look at me as that immigrant. And that's okay because it makes me push even harder. When I first came out of college, I was a stockbroker. And I was probably 2 months into my job. I had to make 450 phone calls to complete strangers every day and ask them for $300,000 and to invest. There was a time where all of the brokers were on the phone and I was between calls and the phone was ringing. So I'm like, nobody's picking up, I'm gonna pick it up. I'm like, hello, oldie stockbrokers. And from across the other way, there's a guy yelling, he's like, get off the freaking phone, you spick. You're supposed to be making outgoing calls. And everybody in the whole office heard it. So growing up on 26th Street, and the first reaction is you're gonna jump up and it's like, I'm gonna nail this guy. And I jumped up and I said to myself, you know what? I can't play into that victim role. I came here to do a job. I'm gonna show him. I'm gonna show him how good I am as a Mexicano, as that little spick that he referred to me as. And so within 6 months, I was the top producer in the office and in the region. But it was actually the way they treated me afterwards was really interesting because they were all kissing my butt. And they wanted to be my best friend. But I remembered, I was like, 6 months ago, you were treating me like dirt. And I say that because there's always been a time, or maybe there hasn't been a time, when some of you may have been in a situation where you were discriminated against or called a name. You were passed over for promotion. You lost out on a business contract. And those feelings kind of resonate within you of anger and frustration and resentment. And you say, what am I gonna do about that? That you're so infuriated, you might go home and it's like, I'm ready to explode. And those feelings stay with you for a long time. And they're defining moments in your life. It's like, what are you gonna do about it? I think we talk a lot about kind of awakening that sleeping giant. You know, for 30 years, people have been talking about Latinos are the sleeping giant. It's like, that's great. And we all know the statistics. By 2050, we're gonna be 30% of the population. 1 in every 3 Latinos, or 1 in 3 Americans are gonna be Latinos. That's great. But I'm here now. I wanna live the dream now. I don't know if I'm gonna be around in 2050. My kids are, and that's great, but we are a power now. And this slide shows you how powerful we are. When you look at our buying power, We're $1.7 trillion. We're sixth in the world. It's the United States, it's China, the BRIC countries, and then the US Latino buying power. That is something that's massive. We're 2 times the size of Spain, 1.5 times the size of Mexico. And that's something that gets overlooked. When we look at, let me get to the next slide here, what it is that's happening to us, the rapid growth rate, the youth. The United States needs our population, the growth. And that's something that when we look at all of those numbers, it's great. But one thing that we do not talk about is money. When I was growing up as a kid, I didn't know anything about stocks or bonds till I was a senior in high school at Bogan. And my teacher, as much as he tried to explain to us what the stock market was and we're going to play a game, he asked us, who knows what a stock and a bond is? So I was a smart guy. I was like, Mr. Ortiz, I'm a stock boy at 16 Plus Women's Store, and a bond is something between a man and a woman. And he's like, no. But actually, that turned me on. And that I started to learn about the stock market, and it was a challenge. He's like, look, Martin, only 1% of the whole US population can read the stock tables. It's not difficult. He taught us, and we felt privileged. All these kids from Little Village were like, we know how to read a stock table. Everybody thought we were from Mars and had like 4 heads and we're purple. They're like, what's that? What are all those numbers going across? But you felt that you can actually achieve something. It didn't matter how poor we were. We never talked about money because we didn't have money. We used to joke around, it's like, we're broke as the 10 Commandments. And everybody in the neighborhood was poor. I didn't really realize I was poor till I went to high school and I was in a suburb. I was like, wow, we have no money at all. And but that was good. That was good for me. I think from that point, I started to realize, I was actually speaking at a Harvard panel of Latino Ivy League schools at Harvard University. And it was a room full, probably about 800 students. It was a Saturday morning. I asked them, how many of you kind of are business majors? There were 4 Latinas that raised their hand. It's like, wow. I was like, how many of you think they're sellouts because they're majoring in business? Everybody raised their hand in that auditorium. And that's when it hit me. It's like, they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand that the economic power is actually controlling the agenda for policies, for education, for immigration, for social services. And that is kind of trickling down. That's something that when we look at all of the things that we need to do as Latinos, we talk about the sleeping giant. I'm tired about talking about it. We need to do something. We need to wake up that sleeping giant. We need to talk about money. We need to talk about how we're going to invest our money. How are we going to invest in the stock market? We are creating wealth for other communities. Some of you are the first one to go and buy the iPhone and the iPad and the iWatch. It's like, do that, but buy the Apple stock because you're creating wealth for other people. And they're quadrupling their money every year because of you. We need to be smarter about what we're doing. We need to be educated about money. We don't talk about it. And it's not to talk about money just for the sake of talking about money. It's the impact that we can have with creating wealth. I've been very fortunate and blessed in my life to have a wonderful family. And because of business, we can kind of go out there and have dinner with the President of the United States and have dinner with the Senate President. But without that creation of wealth, we can't sit at the table. If we are not sitting at the table, Latinos are an afterthought. We're not shaping the policies of what's happening in business. There are so many different initiatives out there that we need to do, but getting access to business, it's the greatest equalizer. because people respect you, and then they're going to have you a seat at the table. And when you're at that table, whether it's a president of the United States or the major CEO of a corporation, you have to tell them when they're wrong and the perspective from the Latino community, because that's our obligation back to our community. We have to do more of what we're doing. But when you are out there looking at the 1.7 trillion, we are not controlling the money. We're at the bottom. We're the ones asking for some money in education, in media, and how we're being portrayed, in Hollywood. That's something that we need to do a better job of. We need to make sure that we're mentoring our folks. As Don Ancina had mentioned, giving internships, giving back. There's a dear friend, he just passed away 2 months ago. His name is Danny Villanueva, one of the first Mexicans to ever play football for the LA Rams, the Cowboys, and then he went to go work for Univision and became manager, and then he became owner. He sold it, made a lot of money. It struggled, he bought it back at a discount, and then he was gonna sell it again and go public. So what he did when he was going public, he made all of his senior managers, Latinos and Anglos, all of you are gonna do business with this Latino at Merrill Lynch, Ron Meraz. In the 80s, they're like, I have my own broker. It's like, no, you work for me, this is who you're gonna do business with. They all went and opened up accounts. Ron's first week in business, he brought in a $90 million account, which would probably be close to about $1 billion now. Ron became a rock star. He went on to run China. He went on to run the Israeli office as a Latino. And it put him in a different platform, but it took a person like Danny to kind of go and instruct them to do business with other Latinos. But that changed it. Danny was one of the biggest Latino philanthropists in the country. And he helped out so many Latinos throughout the years. We have to talk about money more often. We have to talk about wealth creation because it's extremely important. Not just investing, but how are we going to save for college? How are we going to buy investment properties? How are we going to start a business? Those are important things that we never talk about as kind of who we are in business and in government and in non-for-profits. Kind of this slide shows the lack of Latinos in some of those areas. Look at banking, look at academic institutions, look at Hollywood studios, the top foundation, Silicon Valley. We just had to change the slide because a guy, Oscar Munoz, just became CEO of United Airlines. That's great. You know what? He's one of 9 kids that grew up in East LA, so he knows the struggle, but it's important for him to give back. Can you imagine if we had the CEO of Disney that was a Latino and the right Latino? The senior jobs that would be created there, the Hollywood movies that would have brown faces, the princesses that would have brown faces. It's a trickle-down effect. It's a snowball effect because even the people who are trying to do business with Disney, if they would say, they've got a lot of Latinos. The CEO is Latino. Maybe I need to hire some more Latinos in my company so it better position me to do business with Disney. That's the power of the economics, but also of us working together. We talk about the Latino unity, and I get frustrated because we fight so much amongst each other, and we're fighting over nothing. We have 1% of nothing. The other communities, Irish, Italian, they're like, Martin, if you can ever get your caca together as your community, you'd actually be a force to reckon with. I know I put a little illustration. There's a good friend, Jorge Ramirez. He's the head of the CFL, Chicago Federation of Labor, and he uses this example. As a few, it's easy to break because they're not sticking together. People are scattered out there. As Latinos, if we all stick together, it's almost impossible to break us. You can't if we all stick together. Whether we're Mexican, Puerto Rican, Colombian, Venezuelan, Cubanos, That unity needs to happen more often. Doesn't matter we're north side, south side, Mexican, Puerto Rican. We need to come together. The Jewish community has done a phenomenal job of being the community that has worked together. They have a Hebrew kind of classical term called tzedakah. And that means justice, righteousness, and charity. But that Jewish community, they are always helping one another. They're helping each other in business. They're helping each other going to school. They're helping others outside of their community. And they have got a wonderful reputation of business leaders, law firms out there. We, as a New America Alliance, we're a Latino organization of CEOs. We sent our executive director to Israel for a month to study the Jewish religion, the culture, the business. Our executive director came back. She said, it's like, look, she gave us all these enlightening statistics. The one that blew me out of my mind was that the Jewish community, they will do business with each other 13 times with other leaders and other businesses before it leaves their community. And the Latino community, we will do business once, and those dollars leave, and they never come back. Can you imagine if we actually did business with each other 13 times before it ever left our Latino community? What it would do for our non-for-profits, what it would do for our businesses, what it would do for our colleges and all of our grammar schools? Those are powerful numbers. But they have it down. That's great. We need to learn from them. If we could just take a small sliver of how they work with each other, we would grow our community 100-fold. There's a good friend of mine, has a construction firm. His father and grandfather had it. Extremely successful, one of the biggest in the country. And I was like, Ken, you do a great job of working with other Jews in your business. He's like, Martin, I don't think I do that. It's like, I don't think my father does that either. I'm like, no, you should really go back and look at it. So he did, and he came back. He's like, you know what, Martin, you're right. 74% of our vendors, the people we do business with, are Jews. Either Jewish businesses or companies that have Jews that are leading them. And that's great because they circulate it. They put people on boards. They put people in non-for-profits, but they're also helping out their community, and they're growing. And that is phenomenal. Not growing as a population, but their wealth. But they are kind of dictating, not dictating, but really kind of controlling the agenda of where things are going. So that's something that we need to do as our Latino brand. We need to raise our bar, but we need to do something about it. I know we talked about Donald Trump. Maybe Donald Trump is that one guy that's going to waken that sleeping giant. Because you know what? I think some of the anti-immigration laws are good. Because it gets our people fired up that they're going to go out and vote. They're going to do something about it. Pete Wilson did it in California, and there's been more Latino elected officials kind of elected since that time. In Arizona, it'll happen to be the same. And Donald Trump, it'll backfire on him. But our people need to do something. We need to wake up, and we need to control the agenda. And part of that is through the economic wealth. We don't discuss it. We don't talk about it. But we need kind of those individuals. Look at Oprah Winfrey. Look at Magic Johnson. Oprah Winfrey can go out there, start up 15 new schools. Here's the check. Bam. Magic Johnson, I'm going to buy the LA Dodgers, $2 billion. Here you go. Who are most of those fans? Latinos. We are the consumers, but we're not the owners. We need to be thinking about how do we become the owners. We need to be looking at who are Latinos that are like the Pritzker family, that have their large foundations, that are giving money because they have the wealth to give back. That's what's extremely important. Those are things that we are not talking about. I think we need to be bold and we need to be assertive. Sometimes we come into business meetings, it might be for a job, And we're very, oh, well, Latino perspective, this, like, screw that. You go out there and you want to take it, you're doing them a favor. They're lucky to have you in that job. They're lucky to have you doing business with them because you're going to help them grow their business. And you got to come with that attitude. You can't be this passive kind of person or company that's going to go out there and be taken advantage of because you're going to regret it later. We need to change the mindset and really waken that sleeping giant. We have the ability, as all of us in this room, as leaders, to go out there and make change. It comes down to really, how does our community benefit? It's that creation of Latino wealth and empowerment, and creating our brand, that we're not the rapists, that we are the CEOs, that we are kind of doing some mega deals, not just here in the States, but also in Mexico and in Europe and in Asia. But it's taking that, and how does that build our Latino community? That those businesses are good civic-minded leaders, and that they're giving back to our community, and it's rising all tides. There's going to be some businesses that aren't going to care, that think they were smart enough, they did it on their own. But we can't have those setbacks kind of stall everything that we're doing. We need to take control of the agenda. We need to take control of the money. And until we're there, we will not realize that we can shape education, social services, housing, media, all the other issues that are important to our community. We need to create that wealth and use that wealth to our community's benefit. It's a shared struggle that we have, and it will not end kind of soon. There's still going to be times where you're discriminated against. There's still times that I could be at a dinner with the President of the United States and 13 other CEOs. I asked it's like, can I use the restroom? They're sure, go downstairs, and it's right. I was like, okay. It was at someone's house. So I go down there, Secret Service like, what are you doing down here? I was like, well, I told the restrooms are down. He's like, no, this is for the staff, the wait staff. And I was like, wow, that's humbling. And they thought I was a wait staff, but it puts everything in perspective, that the struggle still continues. But it's up to us to go out there and make a difference for our community. We can do well financially, and we can do good. We, as Latinos, have the power to change that kind of image of us, that brand unity, the creation of wealth, and access to capital. Anybody can make a buck out there, but it takes somebody special to make a difference. Thank you.